August 22, 1934. A ferry carrying some of America's most dangerous criminals approaches a solitary island in San Francisco Bay. One of them, inmate number 85, also known as Alphonse Capone. Their destination, Alcatraz Federal Penitentiary, a prison designed to be inescapable. It would soon become the most notorious in American history. Long before it was a name synonymous with despair, Alcatraz Island, or Isla de los Alcatraces, Island of the Pelicans, was a rugged, windswept outcrop in the heart of San Francisco Bay. In 1775, Spanish explorer Juan Manuel de Ayala first charted the island. Following the California gold rush in the 1850s, the U.S. Army, fearing foreign interest in the booming city of San Francisco, transformed the island into a military reservation. A formidable fortress, a citadel, rose from its peak, bristling with over 100 cannons, part of a triangle of defense for the bay. It also became home to the first operational lighthouse on the West Coast. The island's isolation, the treacherous currents, and the frigid water soon suggested another purpose. By the late 1850s, Alcatraz began housing military prisoners. Its role as a fortress diminished, but its destiny as a place of confinement was just beginning. The original citadel was torn down in 1909, its foundations used to build a new, imposing military prison, the Pacific Branch U.S. Disciplinary Barracks, constructed largely by the hands of the military prisoners themselves. This very structure would later become the infamous Rock. For over 80 years, the U.S. Army utilized Alcatraz, until 1933, when the Department of Justice saw a different, more formidable potential. The 1920s and 30s saw a surge in organized crime, a generation of public enemies that existing prisons struggled to contain. The Federal Bureau of Prisons needed a new kind of institution, a maximum security, minimum privilege penitentiary. A place for the incorrigibles, the escape artists, the men who caused relentless trouble elsewhere. Alcatraz, with its natural barriers and existing infrastructure, was the perfect, fearsome candidate. From 1934, Alcatraz was reborn. The existing military prison was retrofitted, fortified with tougher iron bars, strategically placed guard towers, and an unyielding set of rules. Each prisoner had his own cell, a stark 5 by 9 feet space. There was roughly one guard for every 3 prisoners. Life on the Rock was a relentless routine of monotony and discipline. Prisoners were guaranteed only 4 basic rights: food, clothing, shelter, and medical care. Everything else, work, access to the library, recreational activities, was a privilege to be earned. The silence was a weapon. A strict code often forbade talking, amplifying the isolation. The goal was not just to confine, but to break the will of men deemed unbreakable. Alcatraz housed some of America's most notorious criminals. Al Capone, the Chicago gangster, spent his declining years here, his power and influence neutralized by the island's grim reality. George Machine Gun Kelly, another infamous figure of the Prohibition era, also walked these cell blocks. Robert Stroud, immortalized as the Birdman of Alcatraz, was a resident, though he never kept birds at Alcatraz. His ornithological studies took place during his earlier incarceration at Leavenworth. His violent history, including the murder of a guard, was what landed him in the system for 54 years. Most inmates, however, weren't household names, but rather those deemed too dangerous, too prone to escape, or too resistant to rules at other federal institutions. The very essence of Alcatraz was its claim of being escape-proof. The frigid waters of San Francisco Bay, averaging 50 to 55 degrees Fahrenheit, and its strong, treacherous currents were a formidable deterrent. Man-eating sharks were a myth, but the cold and the currents were deadly real. Yet the human spirit, even in the face of overwhelming odds, is a powerful force. Over its 29 years as a federal penitentiary, 36 men attempted 14 separate escapes. Most were caught, some were shot and killed, others drowned. One of the most violent chapters in Alcatraz's history was the Battle of Alcatraz in May 1946. 6 prisoners, led by bank robber Bernard Coy, initiated a desperate bid for freedom. Coy, a cell house orderly, had meticulously observed a flaw in the gun gallery's security. He starved himself to squeeze through widened bars he'd spread with a homemade device, overpowering the guard and gaining access to weapons and keys. The plan was to seize the prison launch, using guards as hostages. But a crucial yard door key was missing, its lock jammed. Trapped, their plan unraveling, the escape attempt devolved into a bloody 2-day siege. The U.S. Marines were called in. When the smoke cleared, 2 officers and 3 inmates were dead, and many more wounded. 2 of the surviving inmates involved were later executed for their roles. But the escape that cemented Alcatraz into legend, the one that continues to fuel debate and speculation, was the one on June 11, 1962. Frank Morris, a man with a reported IQ in the top 2%, along with brothers John and Clarence Anglin, executed a plan of incredible ingenuity and patience. Aided by a 4th inmate, Alan West, who ultimately couldn't make it out of his cell in time, they spent months meticulously chipping away at the crumbling concrete around the ventilation ducts in their cells, using tools like sharpened spoons and a drill improvised from a vacuum cleaner motor. The noise was masked by accordion music during the designated music hour. They crafted dummy heads from soap, toothpaste, concrete dust, and toilet paper, adorned with real hair from the barber shop, to fool the guards during nightly counts. On the vacant top level of their cell block, they established a secret workshop. Here, they painstakingly fashioned life preservers and a 6x14-foot inflatable raft from over 50 stolen raincoats, stitching the seams and vulcanizing them against hot steam pipes. Wooden paddles were improvised. On that fateful June night, they slipped through the enlarged vents, climbed the utility pipes to the cell house roof, shimmied down a bakery smokestack, scaled 2 barbed wire fences, and launched their makeshift raft from the northeast shore, vanishing into the dark, choppy waters, presumably heading for Angel Island 2 miles north. The escape wasn't discovered until the next morning. An intensive search by the FBI, Coast Guard, and Bureau of Prison Authorities turned up tantalizing clues. A paddle here, a plastic-wrapped wallet containing photos and names related to the Anglins there, shreds of raincoat material, and a deflated life vest. But of the men, there was no definitive trace. The official FBI conclusion, after a 17-year investigation, was that Morris and the Anglins likely drowned in the bay's frigid, unforgiving waters, their bodies swept out to sea. Yet, no bodies were conclusively identified. The U.S. Marshal Service keeps the case open to this day, with wanted posters still active. Rumors and alleged sightings have persisted for decades, fueling the enduring mystery. Did they make it? The 1962 escape undoubtedly shook the foundations of Alcatraz's impenetrable image, but it wasn't the primary reason for its closure. The decision had been made long before Morris and the Anglins disappeared. Operating Alcatraz was simply too expensive. Everything, food, supplies, even fresh water, nearly 1 million gallons had to be barged in each week, had to be transported to the island by boat. This made it nearly 3 times more costly to run than any other federal prison. Furthermore, decades of exposure to saltwater spray had severely eroded the buildings. An estimated $3 to $5 million was needed for restoration and maintenance alone. On March 21, 1963, after 29 years of housing America's most challenging prisoners, USP Alcatraz officially closed its doors. After its closure, Alcatraz lay largely abandoned. Proposals for its future ranged from a United Nations monument to a shopping complex. Then, in November 1969, the island took on a new symbolism. a group of Native Americans, Indians of all tribes, occupied Alcatraz, claiming it as Indian land. Their 19-month occupation was a pivotal moment in the Native American Red Power movement, bringing international attention to the plight and rights of indigenous peoples. The occupation ended with their removal by federal marshals in June 1971. During this period, some structures were damaged by fire. In 1972, Alcatraz Island became part of the newly formed Golden Gate National Recreation Area, opening to the public the following year. Its name still evokes a potent mixture of fear, fascination, and enduring mystery. Was it truly inescapable? Did Morris and the Anglin brothers achieve the impossible, vanishing into new lives, or did the unforgiving bay claim them as it had others? The concrete and steel stand as a testament, but the whispers of its secrets still echo across the water.